There we go. This is the January 8th, 2026. First time I've had to say that. Hearing for Z0457-25, request for conditional use permit by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office Marine Unit for use of an existing building as a warehouse. My name is Joe Turner. I'm the county's hearings officer. I'll start with some brief announcements and a summary of the process that will follow so everyone understands how you can participate in the hearing today. I start by saying I'm not a county employee. I am licensed as an attorney and trained as a planner. I serve under contract to the Board of Commissioners. I say that so you know you're getting a somewhat independent review of the application before me today. My role as the hearings officer is to conduct public hearings and make decisions about certain land use matters in Clackamas County. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the county's existing laws. I'm not a policymaker. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the laws. If you think that the laws need to be changed, you can work with Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners to do that. But state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. As a hearings officer, I'm to provide an unbiased decision maker. I believe I am unbiased with regard to this application. I have not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. As I noted prior to the recording started, I have driven by the site, not specifically for this project, but just traveled through the area, so I'm aware of the building that's there. But anyone has the right to challenge my impartiality, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, and you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. I'll start by asking staff to summarize their staff report, copies of which are available on the county's website. I will note that staff are not the project proponent. They're merely providing an overview of the project, the process, and the laws that apply, and in their opinion about whether the application does or does not comply with the approval criteria. Then the applicant, who has the burden of proof to show that the application does comply with those approval criteria, will have the opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. If anybody else wants to say anything about this application in support, opposition, or with questions or concerns, they may do so. Once everyone has had an initial opportunity to testify, I'll give staff and the applicant alone the opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If those responses include any new evidence, I will give everyone a chance to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I'll close the public portion of the hearing without taking additional public testimony. In most cases, I'll issue a written decision within about 2 weeks after the close of the public record. I'll send my decision to the county, and the county will send it to parties of record. So anybody who testifies orally or in writing will be sure and receive a copy of my decision when it's issued. Looks like there's nobody else that's not staff or the applicant online, so we don't have to go into the rest of that. When you testify, please begin by stating your name. Please spell your last name so I get it right, and if you represent someone else, please say so. There's no arbitrary limit to how long you can testify, but testimony should be relevant to the applicable approval criteria, which are set out in the staff report. So it's important that all parties make their best case to me. My decisions are final for purposes of the county, but may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. However, LUBA generally will not allow new testimony and evidence on appeal. They'll decide any appeal based on the record before me. So if you feel it's important that myself or any future decision maker knows something about this application, you need to make sure it gets into the record before me. In order to preserve your right to appeal, you or someone expressly representing you must testify orally or in writing before the close of the record. And in order to raise an issue on appeal, someone must have raised that issue before me with enough specificity that people can understand what the issue is. If the applicant wants to object to any conditions of approval on constitutional grounds, they must raise those issues before me as well. If anyone feels they need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have the opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. But if anybody wants me to hold the or excuse me, whether or not the hearing is continued or the record is held open for any other purpose, state law requires that I hold the record open for an additional week for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. The applicant can waive that right if they choose, but if anybody else wants me to hold the record open for any other purpose, or anybody wants me to continue the hearing, you must make that request before the close of the hearing today. Also, my decisions must comply with state law that requires that I issue a final written decision within 150 days in this case. Uh, uh, so there's some limit to how long I can hold the record open or continue the hearing. That concludes my introduction. Ms. Fields will give us an overview of the technical issues, technical aspects of the Zoom platform, and then summarize her staff report.
Thank you. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county website later today. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members' camera will not be turned on at any time. The audience members' microphones will be muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will use the raise hand button. For people who have called in to join by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Staff will call upon you when it is time for you to provide testimony. You will unmute your microphone and then provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you have provided your testimony, you can lower your hand and your microphone will be muted again. If the record is left open at the end of this hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, you can email that testimony to myself, Joy Fields, at jfields@clackamas.us or mail it to Clackamas County Planning and Zoning at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City, Oregon, 97045. My email address is also available on the website where you found the Zoom link for today's hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive written notice of the hearings officer decision and a link to access the full written decision. If you do not wish to testify, but you would like to receive the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address by emailing it to me at jfields@clackamas.us. So we are here today for the hearing for Z0457-25. I have the wrong date, so I apologize for that. It is January 8th, 2026. I will fix that typo before saving it as an exhibit. The applicant is Callie Light with Relevant Building Company. And we are looking at the hearing using the Zoom platform. As I just discussed, the hearing is being recorded, and audience members who wish to testify or are in the audience will never have their cameras turned on. Their microphones will be unmuted when it is their opportunity to provide testimony. Public testimony is received using the raise hand button. If you are using a phone to access today's hearing, press *9 to raise your hand. Before you provide your testimony, please state your name and mailing address and lower your hand when finished. If the record is left open, provide additional written testimony to myself, jfields@clackamas.us, or mail it to the Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Office at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City, Oregon. We are here to talk about the conditional use. It is proposed on two tax lots that have a combined acreage of 0.37 acres. It is nestled between the railroad and Highway 99. And there is an existing structure that was built with building permits as a residential accessory structure, as well as a gravel lot that you see there in the upper portion of the subject property. That gravel lot has a driveway going through it. Um, this application has not received any public comments other than ODOT that provided comments that found no concern with the application and noted that if any improvements to the access is needed, coordination with them and following their processes will be required. They followed up their initial comments with a comment that if crossing the railroad is proposed at all with this use, um, coordination with the railroad will be needed to ensure that the railroad crossing is allowed or approved through the railroad. The staff report recommended approval with conditions, and the application was deemed complete on November 17th. The planning review period ends April 16th, 2026. As noted when we were looking at the aerial image, the proposal is to use the existing structure on tax lot 2000, and then to have two parking spaces on tax lot 2100 across an unimproved platted road. The landscaping for the site is identified on the site plan, but the dimensions of that landscaping is not clear. And landscaping to meet our zoning requirements cannot be on someone else's property. You have to have the ability to maintain, replace, and install the landscaping. And so that came into play in the staff report regarding 1009. When we had the pre-application conference with the applicant, I highlighted that because it is a municipal or government building, it is considered an institutional use. And the government use is identified as a conditional use in the RRFF5 zone. And so we are here today for a conditional use review of the proposal. Looking at the site, because the structure is already there and they already have access to Highway 99, because the properties are relatively flat and located in a way that meets the needs of the sheriff's office, the site was found suitable for the proposed use. Using the second tax lot to allow for the parking made it so that the site was suitable. As a conditional use, the proposal has to comply with subsection 1007.07, which is the transportation concurrency requirement that the transportation system is safe and adequate to serve the proposed use. Because the use is a modification of an existing development, meaning the structure is already there and the gravel parking area is already there, staff found that it was exempt from 1007.07 because there's no increase in motor vehicle traffic and it's a modification of an existing development. Because it is a storage building that was built as an accessory residential structure and there is no change to the exterior of the structure proposed, The applicant noted that the proposed change of use will also not increase the traffic. With those pieces of information, the staff consider that the proposed use will not alter the character of the surrounding area in a way that substantially limits, impairs, or precludes the use of surrounding properties from conducting their primary uses. The surrounding properties are rural residential, and so the primary uses on the adjacent properties and the surrounding area includes farm and forest uses as well as residential development. The applicant highlighted that the proposal is consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. Staff agreed that the public facilities goals as well as the land use policies are met with this proposal. One of the key pieces of conditional uses is that they have to comply with the applicable requirements of the underlying zoning district, as well as any overlay zones or special use requirements, as well as the development standards. Reviewing the property, the subject properties are outside the special flood hazard area, and there's no intensification of the use that would impair the Willamette River Greenway. And thus, there were no overlay zoning districts that required additional land use review for the use, and the use was found to comply with those overlay zones. There is no special use requirements for a government warehouse, and so there are no sections in the 800s that apply. The development standards in the 1000s sections were reviewed, and as conditioned, they could be met. I did want to highlight that the applicant did not provide preliminary statements of feasibility for water, septic, or surface water management. And with the notation that they addressed those criteria by saying no new utilities were being proposed. And staff was unable to find any building permits that included a review of water or plumbing for toilets. And so with that, staff found that the application was complete and that 1006 was not applicable because no utilities were currently in the structure or being proposed. Because the structure is not expanding, um, there's no additional surface water management beyond what is there now. There was staff talked with the building codes program, and they were surprised that no rain drains were provided for the structure in 2016. And so there may be additional surface water management that has to occur to have the building have a change of use permit. With that, that concludes my staff report. A summary of my staff report. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you. I do have a number of questions. Primarily, generally, I think this complies with the approval criteria. I just have some clarification questions. Um, Something on page 8, I don't know what. No, never mind that one. Page 11, I had a question.
Okay, let me go
Oh,
to
it's
page
the
11.
yeah, under 120303A, I think it's just a typo. It refers to table 315 and section 315 of the ZDO. I think that's supposed to be 316.
You are correct. It's
Okay.
zoned RRFF5 and 316 is the applicable section. Uh, Table
Yep.
10 identifies 316. So I apologize for
No big deal.
not
I've
changing
done
that.
the same. I just wanted to
Yeah.
get it in the record so we don't have to deal with it later.
Yep.
Um, Page 12, the first finding says the site's only suitable if I find that the use of block 1 for parking for block 2 for the warehouse use is if I approve it. Is there a standard for that? I mean, it seems perfectly fine, but
It's the parking standards are in 1015. There are standards for the width, but the the reason I worded it that way is because of the platted road that separates block one from block two.
is there any
So,
standard that requires that parking be on the same lot as the primary use?
um, I verified with the planning director before today's hearing that because the notice identified the parking on that area, there is no concern from planning
Okay,
using that separate tax lot or that separate block of the plat for
okay.
parking.
I have no concerns with it either. I just saw that and wondered what am I approving it for?
It-
Um, yeah, and I understand what I'm approving it for. And if staff have, if planning has no concerns, I don't either. So I will, if I approve this, which I probably will, then I would approve that portion of it as well. Um, can we pull up the definition of institutional use again that was in your PowerPoint?
yes.
Because it seems like a government use, even a warehouse would be a institutional use, but I don't see how it fits within the specific uses that are listed in that definition.
Technical difficulties.
Yep.
Let me go to a different window. In the definition of institutional use, there is the inclusion of municipal and civic buildings.
Okay.
So that those are buildings used for government use.
Yep. That's what I was missing. It's a very broad term, but I think it fits within that broad term, so no issues there then. Also on page 13, regarding the traffic, the finding states that they won't increase any traffic, but it's an existing residential use for you're adding a new use. I mean, the residence is still there, so it seems like there's got to be some increase in traffic. It's going to be minimal, but I don't see how it's none.
The applicant found that the number of trips to the storage building will not increase with the sheriff's department using it because the applicant will no longer be using it for storage. Um, there was nothing to indicate that it would increase or decrease, and so staff found that the applicant's findings were adequate.
Okay, I'll consider that issue.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we addressed that one in 18. Page 19, I had a question.
Page 19.
Yeah, but just under 1,503 building design. It seems like that standard doesn't apply because it's an existing building for the building
And
facade, primary entrance,
no
etc.
exterior changes are
Yeah,
proposed. Yeah.
yeah. So it seems like that one doesn't apply at all, but there
Okay.
are findings addressing it. So does it apply in your opinion, or should I just change that to doesn't apply and we'll go from there?
It could go either way.
Okay.
Because it was built as a rural residential accessory structure, it seems to be suitable for the surrounding use and the building requirements uh, allow for buildings that are suitable for the proposed use. And so I found that the criteria were met. However, you're absolutely correct. It's an existing building and there's no proposed exterior changes. And so you could just say it's not applicable.
Okay. Like I said, not a critical issue. Page 20, bottom third or so, it says the building's not accessible or visible by the public. It, isn't it visible from Highway 99? Like I said, I drove by prior to this application. I'm just generally familiar with the area, but I don't remember if that building is actually visible or not.
Based on the topography, it is a little bit below 99 and there's landscaping. It may be slightly visible. So that may be, I have not driven by it or tried to see it from Highway
Okay.
99. So maybe the applicant can address that. And if that's a typo, I apologize.
No, that I just wanted a confirmation of that before I adopt that finding. Um, nope. Page 25. Oh, again, under 1602 streetlights, it seems like that's not applicable because it's outside the UGB. But you said it's met, and either way, again. But
Yeah, it's not applicable. It's outside of the lighting district and outside the UGB.
okay,
And it's
page
not a subdivision and no new intersections are being created.
same on page 30. It's that's standard. In number 8 only applies inside the UGB, so it's not applicable. Page 37. Oh, at the bottom of the page, the last paragraph says, I think it's just a typo. Because tax lot 2100 serves the access and parking for the project, staff agree with staff that adding landscaping, I think you meant to say applicant, that staff agree with the applicant.
Okay. That on the bottom.
Last paragraph, starting with the 2025 aerial image, second sentence, because tax lot 2100 is where it starts. And staff agree with staff.
Yes.
Okay. That should say applicant. Do you agree with the applicant?
Or I agree with myself, but yes, I do agree with you.
I hope so. Otherwise, I sometimes disagree with myself too.
I agree with myself. Not logical to add landscaping around the parking spaces that are currently just a gravel lot. And yeah.
Yeah, okay. Not a big deal. Page 42, the finding starts out with a quote. I'm assuming that's from the applicant, but it wasn't identified as such. It says according to ZDO 70503, etc. I just want to clarify that that is a quote from the applicant.
The site also does not have parking lot storage. I believe it is, yes.
Okay. That's just wanted to clarify that so I can fix it in my final order. Those are the only questions I had. Thank you, Ms. Fields.
Thank you.
Ms. Light and the property owner's the applicant's opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well so you can see our presentation. Perfect. Can you see that PowerPoint okay?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sure that I'll be repeating a lot of the information that Joy just gave you, but as you know, this hearing is for a type 3 conditional use review to allow the Sheriff's Department to use an existing warehouse located at 21455 South Highway 99E in Canby, Oregon. Let's see if it'll let me move. Here we go. Again, what we are proposing is a change of use of the existing residential accessory structure from a warehouse, the warehouse for government use The Clackamas County Sheriff's Office is requesting tenancy to use the warehouse as a workshop or storage facility for their marine equipment. We're not proposing any modifications to the existing building, just the change of use. And the reason for this conditional use review is because the subject site is zoned RRFF5, and in that zone, government uses are listed as an allowed conditional use subject to a Type 3 conditional use review. And as you know, the project location is nestled between the railroad here and Highway 99E on the east side. You can see the existing warehouse. You can see the existing landscaping, the driveway that's accessed off of 99E that is shared with the residential homes to the west. This is the Willamette River. And then I should mention, after reading the staff report, we wanted to explore maybe moving the parking here if it is allowable, but we'll sort through that with the transportation department. I know that that is a condition of approval to make sure that the parking complies with their standards. So if it isn't allowable here, we'll just stick with Plan A and keep the parking as it was originally proposed. The existing warehouse is about 5,543 square feet. And the site, as mentioned, has an existing driveway and a gravel area, which is where the owner currently parks when they use the site. We will be delineating 2 parking spaces as required for the government use of the warehouse building. And yeah, and here's the hatched landscape area that you saw in the aerial view. And as Joy mentioned, there is an unimproved tax 100 and tax lot 2000. The tax map just shows a little bit better where that street is at. It was vacated on the further east past the highway. We're in the process of trying to get this vacated. We're working with ODOT and the railroad right now, and it's just been a bit slow working with them. They have to go through their processes. So it doesn't really interfere with this conditional use review, but just something to be aware of, that that's the reason these tax lots are separated with that gap. And then another thing to be aware of, I just wanted to point out the Clackamas web maps kind of skew the aerial image a bit so that it looks like the warehouse building is overlapping the property line. But when you look at a survey from when the warehouse was replaced the previous warehouse boundary. So again, just something to be aware of as we discuss this project. And reading through Joy's staff report, generally we are able to comply with the conditions of approval. I didn't write all of them out, but just to hit a couple of the key points. So we can submit a change of use permit as Joy recommended or requested. We can make sure that the parking access and walkways will meet the code requirements. We can provide evidence that the existing exterior lighting on the building meets code requirements. We can work with the transportation and engineering program to demonstrate that the change of use meets their applicable code requirements. And we can work with Canby Fire District to make sure with fire code requirements. None of that should be an issue. I do want to touch on the landscaping condition a bit further. This is the only one that that I think we should discuss a little bit further. So the recommended condition of approval number 9 states that the applicant shall submit and abide by a landscaping plan that meets the requirements of ZDO 1009.03B and 1009.04. The irrigation and maintenance of new plantings shall be included in the landscape plan. And generally, just to try to condense it down, ZDO 1009.03B requires a 5-foot landscape strip adjacent to the perimeter of the surface parking area, and ZDO 1009.04 requires screening to eliminate or reduce the visual impact of the parking spaces using landscaping or fence. So another thing that we added to the site plan after reviewing the staff report. So the area between the highway and the subject property actually has a drainage ditch. I'll show a better picture of this in just a moment, but the highway has an existing stormwater outfall here and a riprap, and then a drainage ditch that goes basically along the entire east side of the property. So whether the parking's here or here, this drainage ditch is going to interfere with a potential 5-foot landscape area. I'll show you some pictures here. This is an aerial view of where that riprap pad is located. Kind of hard to make out, but it's just sort of this gray patch to the east of the building. And then from looking from the perspective of the site, you can see what that looks like. Here's the pipe and the riprap. Here's a better view. You can see the highway up here draining down. And then here's a view of the eastern edge of the property, landscaping. This is the landscaping between the highway and the property. Here's the gravel drive area. And then you can see where the water flows along the edge and into this culvert right here. And this is, again, where the potential landscaping would be required to go between the parking and the existing landscaping. And here's a close-up of what that culvert looks like. So going back to compliance with ZDO 1009.04, Section B states that screening shall be accomplished by the use of vegetated earth berms. I'll show you some more pictures here in a moment, but Highway 99E is elevated about 18 feet above the subject site elevation, and that difference in elevation creates sort of a natural vegetated earth berm and visual buffer between the road and the site. In the proposed parking, if we have it closer to the building, that's the area where the elevation is the greatest. So here's what the view looks like if you're driving south. You can see the entrance on the right here. And this is where, along the edge of this paving, where parking would go, or closer to the building if allowed. You can see, you know, keep in mind, I guess, that cars would be driving about 50 miles per hour. You can see the elevation difference. As you head south, the road elevation increases and gets to be about the same level as the roof of the existing warehouse. And with the existing landscaping, it is pretty hard to see what, you know, any parking that would be proposed right here. And then again, here's that view looking north. So if you're driving from this direction, at this point, the road is about even with the roof eaves here, and you can't see really any of the parking if it's closer to the building, or if we place it in the original position, it's still pretty obscured by the existing landscaping. So basically, we're proposing the existing landscaping to meet the intent of 1009.03B. Already, the existing landscaping is about 30 feet wide and exceeds the 5-foot landscape requirement. Staff did mention in their report that the existing landscape area is in the Highway 99 right-of-way, but given that the Highway 99 right-of-way stormwater drainage is in that 5-foot landscape strip, it's you know, it's not really feasible to add landscaping there. So that the area of the right of way property and Highway 99 is an area that will likely never be improved. The highway's already built out, and there's that slope that makes it really difficult to add anything there. And I looked into the transportation system plan and the 5-year transportation. Neither of them mentioned any improvements for Highway 99E in this section, so it's unlikely that there would be any changes to landscaping as it exists currently. And we'll just go through some photos so you can get a better sense of what that existing landscaping looks like. Here is a view from the entrance of the site. You can see there's trees kind of evenly spaced, boulders, shrubs. Back here you can see the ground cover. Here's a close-up of some of the trees. Here's the angle looking on the property facing the highway. You can see again trees, shrubs, ground cover to the right, little boulder retaining wall. Here's a view closer to the warehouse, looking towards the highway.
And in this photo, the parking would be about where you're standing, that the photographer is standing? Or behind you?
It would be, yeah, it would be more behind, kind of to the right.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to orient myself to where I am.
Yeah,
Where the
absolutely.
photographer is, rather.
Yeah, absolutely. And another view, this one looks, I think I actually did, oh, I think we're going backwards, that's why.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Oh, okay, so I might have had a couple repeat photos in there, but generally, hopefully you have a sense of the existing landscaping. That's generally everything I wanted to talk about. In summary, we're not changing the existing building. It's just a change in use to allow the sheriff's department to use the building. And we're meeting we're able to meet all of the recommended conditions of approval, except for, with the exception of that landscaping requirement that we just discussed. And the reason for that is because the area that would be landscaped along the edge of the property is already being used as a drainage ditch to help, take care of the stormwater runoff from the highway. And with that in mind, the existing landscape, we believe, meets and exceeds the landscape requirements for ZDO 1009.03 in an area that the right-of-way will likely never be developed. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Light. For the record, is there anybody else who wants to say anything about this application? Looks like the only other participant is county staff, but have to check. Not seeing anybody. Ms. Fields, any response? Anything further from the county? Response from the county?
No.
The landscape issue, I understand what the issue is. Is there anything that would allow them to rely on the existing landscaping topography, or would they require a variance to change from the standard? Or is there some lesser approval?
The buffering requirement, which is where the 5-foot landscaping strip comes from, does have a provision for an alternative that, let me bring it up so that we can know the exact wording. 1009.04 E4, another method that provides an adequate buffer considering the nature of the impacts to be mitigated. So the buffering requirement of 5 feet um, can be altered using this criteria.
Would
The
additional go ahead.
uh, the issue is that Highway 99 there is a scenic road,
Mm-hmm.
and 1009-05 um, discusses that development in the RRFF5 zone shall be set back a sufficient distance from the right-of-way to permit a landscape or natural buffer zone. It doesn't specify how far, but it shall be set back a sufficient distance from the right-of-way. So if we're relying on the right-of-way for the landscaping and buffering requirement of 1009-04, I don't see how we would be meeting 1009-05.
The development and right of way or any RFF5 have to be set back sufficient. That's 1,905.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And so shifting the parking over to allow it would require some of that gravel parking area to be landscaped outside of the stormwater where ODOT stormwater goes, but it would create a landscape buffer
Mm-hmm.
potentially for the parking and for that parking area.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Field. Ms. Light, anything further from the applicant?
Carl was also just suggesting if necessary, we could move the parking here. The idea of moving it closer to the
I'm not
building, of
seeing your
course, is
screen,
so
so I'm not
that,
sure what you mean by here.
oh, so sorry. Forgot to hit share.
Okay.
Perfect. So Carl was just suggesting that we can move the parking area closer to the entrance here, where the landscaping is on the subject property. Our preference, of course, would be to have the parking spaces closer to the building so the sheriff's department doesn't have to walk quite as far.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not acceptable, if the landscaping isn't acceptable as is, this could be another option that would allow us to meet that condition of approval.
Okay. That makes sense as well. I'll consider all those issues. Does the applicant want the opportunity to submit a final written argument?
I think what we want to do is, I think we want to have the flexibility to use any one of those.
Mm.
And if we can and to meet the code, so that means we can go longer and add parking, or we can use existing parking.
Mm. I don't know if you heard Carl just now.
No, I didn't.
He was just saying to have. That's all right. That's all right. He's hoping that we can have the option to have the parking in either this location here where the landscaping is a little wider and crosses
Mm-hmm.
with the property line, or in the original location or closer to the building, whichever, as long as we have the option, whichever one is acceptable to you. That he just wants to make sure that if that's something we need to submit as a written report,
No, I don't
I'd
think
be
so.
happy to do that.
It wouldn't be
Then
necessary. You've clearly raised it.
Perfect. I don't think there's anything else that we would need to submit then.
Okay, so you want to waive the applicant's right to submit a final written argument?
Yeah, just the
Okay.
Joy mentions that the PowerPoint would be submitted as an exhibit, so
Yeah.
I figured that'll be taken under consideration.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with that, I will close the hearing. Based on the findings in the staff report, this application does or will comply with the applicable approval criteria subject to the conditions. The landscape issue I'll take under advisement. I find that it's feasible to comply one way or another. I will write the conditions and the findings to give you some flexibility regarding the location of the parking, and we'll see what we can do as far as flexibility to address the landscape issues. I think you're right. Moving it to the north where there's existing landscaping, that ought to get you there, but it's a long way to walk. So if you could come, I'll draft the condition so that you have the option to show that it's met if you can locate it elsewhere. Um, and so that's what I'll do. I'll issue my written decision within about 2 weeks. I'll send it to the county. The county will send it to party of record, which is the applicant. And that concludes our hearing. Thank you all. Have a good
Thank you
afternoon.
so much.